Shifting focus now to Uttar Pradesh, where the tragedy is only deepening in Kanpur, ladies and gentlemen. Days after two teenage rape victims were found hanging from a tree in Kanpur, one of the girls' fathers, a 50-year-old, has now hung himself to death as well. According to family members, the father was under pressure to withdraw the complaint in the alleged gang rape case. A week ago, the body of his daughter and that of another girl was recovered. The families had then alleged that the minor girls were gang raped after being forced to consume liquor at a brick kiln where they had gone to work. All three accused have been arrested by the Kanpur police. Meanwhile, the Congress General Secretary Priyanka Gandhi has launched a scathing attack on the double-engine Sarkar, saying that there is no law in Uttar Pradesh and that being a woman has become a crime in the state. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our special focus this evening. This is a fever that has put Europe on alert and is raising concerns across the world. It is something called Parrot Fever. Have you heard of it? I had until this morning. 5 people have died in Europe because of it. It's also known as the Sitacosis Parrot Fever. It broke out first in European countries in 2023. But the severity of this infection is being felt only in the first 3 months of 2024, which is this year. As I said, 5 people have already died in Europe. A person get infected if he or she inhales dust which has an infected bird's secretion. It is also possible to catch the disease if an infected bird has bitten you or you have had a mouth-to-beak contact with an infected bird. So those people who work around birds or come frequently in contact with them or have them as pets are at risk. Now, luckily enough, the possibility of parrot fever traveling from one human to another is very, very rare. So how to figure out if you have been infected by this disease? Well, the symptoms are symptoms of common flu or even COVID, fever, headache, muscle ache, and dry cough, pretty much like when you catch a regular viral or a regular fever. As per the World Health Organization, symptoms are generally seen within the first 5 to 14 days after being exposed to the bacteria. Parrot fever is rarely fatal for humans. That means that the scenario of death is highly unlikely. In fact, prompt antibiotic treatment can work like a charm against this disease. Early data shows that fatalities are 1 in 100. And if antibiotics are taken on time and promptly, then there is no reason to worry. But do not think for a second that parrot fever can be taken lightly. European countries are experiencing that firsthand, just this year alone. This bacterial infection has claimed 5 lives, and the figure of those getting infected is expected to touch worrying marks as well. Austria has reported 14 cases of parrot fever. In just 2 months this year, 4 cases have been reported. But the most worrying bit, none of those infected came in contact with wild birds, which floats the possibility of human-to-human transmission as well. Denmark, too, has witnessed a massive surge in cases. The country generally witnesses somewhere between 15 to 30 cases each year. But in the 2 months of this year alone, there have been 23 confirmed cases of parrot fever, and health officials are fearing that the figure is much, much more actually in reality. 4 out of the 5 deaths reported worldwide are from Denmark, which is slowly turning into a hotspot for parrot fever. Germany has reportedly confirmed there are 5 cases even before the start of March. Another country where parrot fever is getting real is Netherlands. 21 cases have been reported between the end of December and February. The figure is worrying because it is twice as much as previous years. The 5th death, in fact, has been reported from Netherlands itself. Now, you must be thinking, why are we even discussing a topic whose roots solely lie in Europe? We are not here to scare you or send a sense of fear through you, but it is important to note that several infections in the past, be it COVID or Nipah virus or swine flu or bird flu, well, they do spread. That's the reality of the times we live in. Dr. Isaac Bogoch is an infectious disease physician and scientist. He's joining us on the broadcast. Dr. Isaac, thank you very much for joining us here. Can I start by asking you, thank you very
My
much.
pleasure.
Can I start by asking you whether there is a possibility of the fever spreading via humans, because there are cases in Europe that have emerged where people are saying, how do we have parrot fever when we've not even come in contact with any bird?
That's a very good question. And, the vast majority of cases are in people who have had some direct or perhaps indirect contact with a bird, be it a pet bird or a wild bird, or even a bird on a farm like a poultry worker. However, there have been rare human-to-human cases that have been documented. I think this infection is rare enough that it's fair to say that we don't have all the information about it, but we still understand a lot about this infection. So it's still, even with these cases being identified in Europe, it's still very uncommon. And the vast majority of cases known to date have some epidemiologic link to birds, either directly or indirectly. But yes, of course, as you point out, there has been documented human-to-human transmission as well.
Dr. Isaac, can I then ask you, it's called parrot fever. Does it spread specifically from only parrots, or can it spread from other birds as well?
Great point. There's many, many different types of birds that can spread the infection. Parrot fever sounds nice and it's easy to say, but it's not really the most accurate definition. Many people in medicine will call it psittacosis, and that's reflective of the syndrome of this particular bacteria that can move from birds into humans and cause a pneumonia-type syndrome, psittacosis. However, I think it's kind of challenging sometimes to pronounce things, and maybe parrot fever is a bit catchier, so that's what people are saying. But in general, there's many, many different bird species, both birds that are used as pets, birds that we have on farms, and even wild birds that can transmit this type of infection to humans.
So, Dr. Isaac, even pigeons, because in urban India, you have pigeons that nest in many of our homes. So is that a threat as well? Can pigeons spread this parrot fever as well?
Possibly. I think there's lots of different types of bird species around the world that can spread this infection. And, we're talking about psittacosis or parrot fever, but it's important to remember that there's lots of different infections that you can get from birds that can be transmitted to humans that can cause severe illness, not just bacteria, but viruses as well, and even fungal infections. And you mentioned several of those in the introduction. The take-home point from all of this is that we're seeing increasing frequency of infections that are transmitted from non-human animals to humans in the last 20 years. Some of them, of course, can impact humans significantly. And as you point out, this can cause a pneumonia. And, the vast majority of people are treated and will do well, but pneumonia still can be serious and it can cause fatalities. They're rare, but this is something that people who are in close contact with birds, regardless of if it's through work or because they have it as a pet, it's something that they can get. So it's something that people should be aware of. The other thing, too, is it's important for clinicians to be aware of as well, because this might not come to mind when someone presents to a hospital or to a healthcare facility with a pneumonia. Remember, people don't come with a rubber stamp on their forehead with the diagnosis. They come in with the syndrome: fever, cough, shortness of breath, sputum production. But it does, the number of organisms that can cause that are vast. So it's important to ask about possible contact with birds in any way, because this might be a possible infection, and that might make the clinician choose different antibiotics to have more broad coverage, including coverage for this particular infection.
We were just listing out, and you have also listed out the symptoms. I want to ask you this: the symptoms, if you look at the symptoms, it's fever, there is cough, there is headache, etc. These are symptoms that are common to a lot of viruses. These are symptoms that are common to COVID. These are symptoms that are common to a viral fever as well. How do we know that this could possibly be parrot fever and therefore needs the attention of a physician or a doctor?
It's a great point. And the answer is you're not going to know by symptoms alone, because the symptoms for this particular infection overlap significantly with symptoms for many other bacterial infections and viral infections and fungal infections. So the key here is the epidemiology. is there a link? Was someone in contact with birds, either pets or birds on a farm or wild birds? And that's really one of the key here things here to help confirm a diagnosis. That will make the clinician say, oh, okay, this could be psittacosis or other infections that are known to be transmitted from birds to humans. And that might prompt the clinician to order certain investigations that they might not routinely order, or possibly make changes or alter their treatment plan, for example, using slightly different antibiotics. I should note, though, that the antibiotics that are routinely used to treat community-acquired pneumonia, just regular bacteria that cause community-acquired pneumonia, many of those antibiotics also cover psittacosis or parrot fever. So many people who may have this infection, who don't even know they have this infection, the clinician doesn't know they have this infection, but they're treating a pneumonia with routine antibiotics. Many, not all, but many of those antibiotics will cover psittacosis. So they might not know what the actual diagnosis is, but they're treating the underlying condition.
Dr. Isaac, great to have you on the show. Thank you very much. We wanted to understand what is this fever that is spreading across Europe. The attempt was not to raise alarm bells here in India, but just to understand what exactly it is. So thank you very much for your time. Thanks, Dr. Isaac. Good to have you on the show.
My pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, we are slipping into a quick break on the show. Coming up next, the big political story of the day that was playing out in the state of West Bengal. That's up next. Do stay with us.